got a lot of guests lined up. Comfortably Smug of the Ruthless podcast will be along after the break. Mary Catherine Ham this hour. Former Congressman John Campbell. I have Selena Zito, who probably has met Mark Fogel's mother at the Butler rally where Donald Trump was hit in the head. Another man, Corey Compatore, was killed. That rally probably led to yesterday's release of Mark Fogel. I'll talk with Selena about that. Mark Thiessen of the Washington Post and a national security maven will be joining me to talk about the news, as will Sarah Bedford. There's a lot. Don't go anywhere. If you miss any of it, go get the podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh, or I'll post all of the interviews at my YouTube channel. And I think you ought to subscribe to it because then the interviews pop up if you subscribe and you just listen to the ones you want to. I want to begin this morning and this evening, depending on where you are in the world, by it's morning in Hawaii, it's afternoon in California, it's 3 p.m. in D.C. at this hour. President Trump has called both Putin of Russia and President Zelensky of Ukraine. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social. I just had a lengthy and productive phone call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. We discussed Ukraine, the Middle East, energy, artificial intelligence, the power of the dollar, and various other subjects. We reflected on the great history of our nation and the fact that we fought so successfully together in World War II, remembering that Russia lost tens of millions in people, and we likewise lost so many. We each talked about the strength of our respective nations and the great benefit that we will someday have in working together. But first, as we both agreed, we want to stop the millions of deaths taking place in the war with Russia-Ukraine. President Putin even used my very strong campaign motto of common sense. We believe very strongly in it. We agreed to work together very closely, including visiting each other's nation. Wow, visiting each Putin in the United States? We have also agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations immediately. And we will begin by calling President Zelensky of Ukraine to inform him of the conversation, something which I will be doing right now. I have asked Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Director of the CIA John Ratcliffe, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and Ambassador and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to lead the negotiations, which I feel strongly will be successful. Millions of people have died in a war that would not have happened if I were president, but it did happen, so it must end. No more lives should be lost! Exclamation. I want to thank President Putin for his time and effort with respect to this call and for the release yesterday of Mark Fogel, a wonderful man that I personally greeted last night at the White House. I believe this effort will lead to a successful conclusion, hopefully soon. I hope so, too. I pray. Now, Secretary Hegseth was in Europe today, and if I heard the report correctly, he said Ukraine will not be able to return to its pre-2014 borders. Didn't say anything about Ukraine giving up Russian territory, which it has seized in the Kursk salient. Didn't say about when the negotiations would end or begin. And he did say Ukraine will not be a member of NATO. And that's not a surprise to anyone who's followed this. He didn't say what would happen if the negotiations fail, which is important to hold your card. I assume that we will rearm Ukraine with everything that they need if the negotiations fail. We have to have an incentive there for Putin to come to the table, and we don't want a return to the 4 years or 8 years of talks we held with the North Vietnamese to conclude the Vietnam War. But it's a serious opening. It's a much-needed opening. I tell you, I understand Russian deaths and wounded, KIA and seriously wounded, are above 600,000. Ukrainian deaths and seriously wounded above 400,000. That's my background briefing by people who know these things. That's so awful. It's 10 times bigger in terms of structural damage than the devastation in Gaza. It is, 1 million versus 50,000 on both sides. The Israelis have lost 1,200 on 10/7, an additional 600 since. Gaza Health Department, which you can't trust, says 44,000 have been killed. We don't know how many of those are terrorists, and we're not going to mourn them. But let's say 50,000 versus 1 million. That's 20 times the loss of life, and that doesn't count the Israeli wounded, so maybe it's only 15 times. But it's so much bigger, and it's grinding up the wealth of nations, the peace of nations, a whole generation of Ukrainians. So I hope it works. All I know, Donald Trump is moving at warp speed. He's sending his best. General Kellogg has done a lot of preliminary work. He's the special envoy on Ukraine. He's not named in the text, but he's a behind-the-scene guy, and he is absolutely such a deeply devoted public servant. He would never want credit for anything anyway. But when you're sending Rubio, Waltz, and Ratcliffe, along with Steve Witkoff, who's had some success, both in Israel and getting Vogel back, then you know you're sending the A-team. Now, I'm not sure Witkoff can play at this level with this many moving parts. But Michael Waltz is a warrior. Marco Rubio's been doing this a long time. John Ratcliffe knows the agency and the secrecy. He knows everything about Ukraine because he was DNI before he became CIA director. It's a good team. It's a good try. All I think Putin needs to know is that we'll throw everything in for the Ukrainians as long as it takes. So he can't win. Now, how do we get out of this? And there's got to be a way for both sides. This is the art of the negotiation, not the art of the deal, the art of the negotiation. There's got to be a way for both sides to claim that they won something, that there's dignity involved for both teams. Both countries have suffered so much and lost so many people that there's got to be a way for Putin not to lose face and for Zelensky not to lose his country. And we make that a lot easier with promises of financial aid and rebuilding. And it's very serious stuff. I'm going to talk with Mark Thiessen, who is a very serious national security guy. I'm going to talk with John Campbell, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm going to talk after the break with Smug about a couple of lighthearted things, because not everything can be serious. But we're going to get to all of that today. So pay attention to the whole show or the entire podcast or every interview over at YouTube. Also, we're a day closer, and the rhetoric has not decreased anywhere, to the resumption of all-out war. And the way Prime Minister Netanyahu is talking, it's going to be so much more intense. It will remind us of the first month of the war, unless all the hostages are released on Saturday. And Hamas, they know where you are now. You gave them an entire glimpse of everyone who's still in the field. They've got the recognition technology. They know where the tunnels are. You'd best lay down your arms and leave. You got like a day to negotiate this. You can say, okay, we want to leave. Can we leave? You can do that. I hope you think about that. Let me tell you about one of our sponsors. They're going to be jammed up today. Our friends at Job Creators Network. And I bring this up because yesterday I got a lot of views over at my YouTube channel for the interview with Bill Bennett, because we were talking about school choice, reform of the Department of Education, and the fact that Doge is finding horrible things there. Christopher Rufo put out a wonderful thread yesterday on how you dismantle DOED, and it's a great thing. The first step, we talked about it, is selling out the student loan portfolio, spinning off and then selling off. You can go look at Rufo's X thread to find that. But we also talk about school choice. And Job Creators Network is all in on school choice. EducationFreedomUSA.com. EducationFreedomUSA.com. Now, I only accept sponsors on my show like Job Creators Network when they do good work, especially if I'm telling you about it during the course of the show. I really want you to go there. I really want you to be part of this effort. JCN has got a bunch of other allies. There are many people in favor of school choice, including Bill Bennett. But everybody needs a networked organization. That's Job Creators Network. Everyone needs to know that parents ought to be making the decisions for their kids. So you head to educationfreedomusa.com. All right, educationfreedomusa.com. I am also going to tell you about American Federal right now, because gold's down a few dollars today, and the markets are tense. Markets don't know what is going on with inflation popping back up to 3%. And part of that is just eggs and avian flu, but part of it is also tariff threats. Part of it is adjustment to Trump. AmericanFederal.com buys and sells gold. I'm telling you at the very top of the show, because I was talking to Nick Grovich on emails last night, and he loves the fact that the phones are ringing. And the phones are ringing because it's not at $3,000 an ounce yet, but I think it's going to go there. I am not certain it will, but I know that for the past 100 years, gold has been the go-to inflation beater, and inflation went up again. So I think it's about 2,940. Call Nick Grovich at 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. Or visit AmericanFederal.com. This is not market-driven. It's not driven by headlines. It's driven by a good diversification strategy, transparent, honest, effective. They will talk to you as long as it takes you to figure out a gold strategy. Mine is buy gold every January, but yours might be different. 1-800-221-7694. That is what greeted me this morning when I opened up my X account, and young Matt Foldy had posted that just about the time I turned on X, and it was like getting hit in the face with a brick. So I don't really know how to respond to decrepit old lefties singing badly. So I call upon the arts of Comfortably Smug. One of the fellows at the Ruthless podcast, who is actually kind of a connoisseur of the cringy things that the left does. They review it often on the Ruthless podcast, America's fastest growing podcast. Hello, Smug. What did you make of that?
Well, thanks again for having me, Hugh. There's this famous Voltaire quote where he says, "I pray to God for but one wish, and it's that all my enemies be absurd." And I think Trump has really gotten that in spades here.
Well, that is a 1931 actual labor union from the United Mine Workers, back when people had to stand up and get their knees broken or they couldn't organize. And that's pathetic. Is that the low point?
And then for them to adapt it to go against Doge, it's really amazing that you have a union song transformed into one that's fighting against cutting government waste. I can't wrap my head around how Donald Trump has managed to get his opponents to take the position of, no, we want to protect wasteful spending. Like, you can't. How does this happen?
I don't know, but he is blessed by the right enemies, and they're dumber than dirt. Before I go to more serious topics, I have to announce that I'm entering a protest with YouTube about Ruthless. Ruthless is closing in on and may have actually passed the 100,000 subscriber mark, at which point they get a plaque, which Smug is going to carry away with him. But I decided, since you have 4 co-hosts, you ought to have to hit 400,000. I'm only at 80,000. I'm just me. I don't have a producer. I've got Dwayne. You've got Spaghettis. Don't you think that would be like a fair? That's Dwayne. Don't you think it would be? He's not working. Don't you think it would be fair if I had like you had to do 400 and I do 100?
I mean, so I told my co-host when they're like, "Why do you get the plaque?" And I was like, "You think it's tough for you?" I told my wife it's going on the mantle, not our wedding photos. So I think she's the only one who's mad about this deal.
Did you hit it yet?
We're a hair's away from hitting it.
All right,
thanks
today,
to your help, you've been mentioning it to your audience so much. We appreciate it.
Today, if you're listening to Hugh Hewitt Show, first go to Highly Concentrated Hugh or to my YouTube channel. Actually, my new YouTube channel, like and subscribe. But then go over to the Ruthless Podcast, like and subscribe, which you have to do if you wish to opine anyway. Like and subscribe. Get them over the 100,000. Maybe they'll let me look at one of those plaques, which before Smug takes it away. Smug, I want to also ask you about internal dynamics at the show. There's clearly tension between Michael Duncan and Ashbrook over that seat at the White House. So have you separated them on the set?
I mean, it was such an incredible way that came together, where the White House contacted Michael Duncan. He was the contact for, you fill out a form if you're a new media company, and they look over and they select you. And so they contact Duncan, and he's heading to a wedding and a funeral in the same weekend. And so he calls Ashbrook and he's like, you want to fill in. This is a terrific opportunity. We can't let this pass by. So I have to say that was incredibly generous of Michael Duncan, and he deserves all the credit in the world. And at the same time, I think Ashbrook did a great job filling in for Duncan. Big shoes
he did
to
a great
fill.
job. He's from Ohio. It was a given. Yeah. But does Duncan have a Wally Pipp jersey now? Is he going to forever be the guy who got replaced in the White House correspondence chair?
Fingers crossed we get another crack at asking a question in the White House, and I'll be sure it's Michael Duncan who goes.
No, Smike, you got to go next. I like Josh. I like Michael. I love you all. But the sunglasses in it would be a complete own goal on all of the legacy media because they bitch so much about Ashbrook being there. Let's get serious. The president talked to Vladimir Putin today and to Vladimir Zelensky. Secretary Hegseth comes out and he says they're not going to be in NATO. They're not going to get back everything they had in 2014. What did you make of the calls? What did you make of the Hegseth declaration?
I think that this is in line with what President Trump said when he was on the campaign trail. The first thing I feel that needs to be done, I agree with President Trump on this, is the killing and the fighting needs to stop immediately. I think we get to that point, and then we could talk about specifics of what territory goes where. But this has been just a very costly war. So many Ukrainians have died. So many lives have been lost. So many lives have been ruined. It needs to stop immediately. And I think the rest of the world has gotten that message loud and clear. You saw the ceasefire in Gaza. That's now a tenuous situation. But President Trump yet again has stepped in and said there's going to be hell to pay if these folks are not brought home. We've seen an American who was imprisoned in Russia since the start of the Biden administration came home. So I think peace through strength is the guiding principle of President Trump and this administration. And I've got full faith that they're going to get the job done to secure our interests.
You know, you made a memorable visit to the Nixon Library. And I think you will remember, I think young Matt Foldy was with you when you made that memorable visit.
He was.
I was not there. But if you remember, President Nixon's grave has on it, and I'm paraphrasing, the noblest title that can be bestowed on a man is that of peacemaker. And he was very proud of having ended the Vietnam War. I just want to know if you think this will work. And I'm not upset by a ceasefire in place while they negotiate the return of the Kursk salient to Russia and a pullback to something less than what the Russians currently hold in Ukraine. I don't know what that is. Do you think it's going to work?
I think so. And because history has shown us that when President Trump is in office, you see all the bullies and the terrorists across the world go into retreat. You saw them Russia was emboldened seeing the disastrous withdrawal that Joe Biden was presided over in Afghanistan. And that's when he made his move. You never saw anything like that happen under President Trump's first administration. And now you're seeing it again. Very quickly, Putin has gotten the message that, okay, there's a new sheriff in town. This is the guy who I can't mess around with. So I have, again, full faith in President Trump. He's going to be able to stop this war and earn that title that President Nixon made so famous. Peacemaker is the most important title a person can have.
It is. Now I want to switch up on you. The Ontario Super Bowl ad. I'm not sure if you saw it. Did you see it, Smug?
Which Super Bowl ad?
Ontario, Canada did a Super Bowl ad. Did you see it?
Oh, boy. Yeah,
right.
I clearly wasn't paying attention to that one.
All right, I'm going to play it for you. It is cut number 14. This aired in the Super Bowl at something like $8 million. Go ahead, cut 14.
Ontario is your third largest trading partner and the #1 export destination for 17 states. Our long-standing economic partnership keeps millions of Americans working. In a changing world, it's time to bring jobs back home and build together. More workers, more trade, more prosperity, more security. For generations, this ally to the north has been here. And for generations more, we'll still be here, right by your side.
Got to be quick to go to the break, and I'll come back. How do you rank that on a scale of 1 to 10, Smug?
I'd say it's a 1. It's probably an olive branch because they know that President Trump is headed up there and they want to live under the American flag. They know it in their hearts.
I'll tell you the backstory when we come back. Comfortably Smug, one of the fellows, is here for 2 segments today. Don't go anywhere except to the Ruthless Podcast at YouTube. Like and subscribe. Get him over the 100. You see, that's Pete Seeger in The Real Deal. Smug, so I just wanted to do back-to-back comparisons. Smug, I showed you the Ontario ad. The backstory is, a Canadian colleague of mine told me yesterday that the lead that Pierre Poilievre had gone from 30 points to under 10 because Canadians are not particularly fond of Donald Trump calling them the 51st state, and that their sense of humor is worn dry here. What do you think of that, and what do you think of the Ontario ad? Should the president let up on our allies to the north?
Well, I think the main idea to get clear here is that we will be greeted as liberators. The Canadian people for generations have lived under a horrible system, a mismanaged system across the board, and they yearn for the freedoms that we enjoy in America. If they want to be a real partner to the North, they'll accept being the 51st state. There could be no better honor for them.
All right, so you're not giving an inch and you want Donald Trump to keep the rag. Let's turn to the very serious thing. A prediction on Saturday. Donald Trump doesn't give ultimatums very often. but he did to the Hamas terrorists. Said all of them, noon Saturday, 7 o'clock Israeli time, or all hell will break loose. And Israel is staging for that war. What's your crystal ball say, Smug?
The best thing that Hamas could do and that they should have done, first off, they should have never launched this attack on innocent civilians. Number two, they should have sent all the hostages home a long time ago. But right now, the most salient point for them to understand is that President Trump does not mess around. When he says there's going to be all hell that breaks loose, there's a lot of folks they could try to talk to about that. The ISIS folks in the cave, that it caved in when President Trump dropped a bomb on them. He could ask Soleimani, but Soleimani's been turned into salsa. So President Trump follows through on promises. Hamas should not try to take his words lightly. He means business.
Do you think he's talking to Khamenei and the Iranian mullahs at the same time? I mean, are you ruling that out?
With this president, I would rule absolutely nothing out. We heard from so many experts. We heard from the mainstream media that, oh my goodness, President Trump took out Soleimani and this could start World War III. There was nothing of the sort. Under President Trump, Iran was effectively bankrupted. Hamas couldn't get any money from them. So President Trump knows what he's doing, dealing with these people for generations. The United States has been sending these, Ivy League delegates over from the State Department like John Kerry. And those people don't know how to talk to the folks in the Middle East who only understand one thing, is that might makes right in their world. And
Exit
President Trump
question,
understands that
comfortably
language
smart.
very clearly.
Exit question. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I watched the first hour of Landman last night. Is that your favorite television series ever?
I mean, it's absolutely terrific. I think it's the third or the fourth episode where he has this great breakdown.
Don't,
America.
no spoilers. I haven't seen it yet. We just did 1 hour. No spoilers.
Watch them all.
We will. We're going to binge watch over the weekend. Comfortably Smug, one of the fellows on the Ruthless podcast. Head over to the Ruthless YouTube channel, like and subscribe in order to get them to 100,000. And if you wish to opine, get Smug's mantelpiece decorated. Thank you, Smug. Come back soon. I am now back with I'm back with Dwayne. I was going to say producer. They got spaghettis over at the Ruthless podcast, but Dwayne has a sponsor, myphdweightloss.com, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
Now, I don't know that spaghettis actually needs myphdweightloss.com, even though his name is Spaghetti. He's like Generalissimo. You didn't go by Dwayne for a long time on this program, did you?
I tried to, but I gave up after the first day.
Generalissimo is what you are and what you will remain. And
Okay.
so Generalissimo was approached because he used to be more prosperous than he is now, 50 pounds more prosperous. Dickensian, actually, in his appearance. But now he's down 50 pounds because he lost it over 3 months using my PhD weight loss. Kept it off for 2 years. How hard is it?
It's not hard. You just have to have the determination to want to do it, and they will create a plan to follow and give you accountability for it and help you through it. It's easy.
864-644-1900. Thank you, Dwayne.
Side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against Josh. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
Welcome back, America. I'm
Which
not sure
side
Mary
are you
Catherine Ham, host of the Getting Hammered podcast, where she meets up with Vic Mattis every week, had a chance to see that yet. Had you seen that yet, Mary Catherine?
Yeah, I'm on the other side. That's
Okay.
the answer. Yeah. Which side am I on? Not that one.
Well, I just thought it was unique in the aesthetic level of disappointment. I don't even have an analogy to the Olympics. It would be like the diver hitting the board. Yeah, it's that bad.
I gotta say, there's gotta be one person in that crowd who can sing. Put that person on the mic. Put that person on the mic.
It's a pretty old crowd, and the young person who's hip with the fro doesn't look to me to be really into the singing. Mary Catherine, I have 2 recommendations. One, every soon-to-be parent, you've never had a child before, you need to listen to Getting Hammered, if only for parenting advice on toddlers being a menace. And 2, you had to warn grandparents as well about the jump. I've gone through 6 grandchildren now, another one on the way, and the jump from the second step, you can't stop weight training because they'll knock you over.
No, yes, that is very important. They will take you by surprise. You have to be in shape and you have to have your reflexes quick, no matter what age you are, if you're taking care of a toddler.
How many headbutts have you taken?
Oh gosh, so many. One actually broke my nose, but I recovered okay. It's not
Oh.
quite the same nose it used to be. But
Oh, I've never had that kind. I'm just telling people, if they want reality of parenting 101, Getting Hammered is excellent. And Vic's got teenagers, so you get both the driving school experience and the toddlers. Mary Catherine, I want to go very serious very quickly. Earlier in the show, I read President Trump's tweet about his call with Putin today. Volodymyr Zelensky followed up with a tweet about his call with the president, which reads, I had a meaningful conversation with POTUS. We long talked about opportunities to achieve peace, discussed our readiness to work together at the team level, and Ukraine's technological capabilities, including drones and other advanced industries. I am grateful to President Trump for his interest in what we can accomplish together. We also spoke about my discussion with Secretary Scott Bessent and the preparation of a new document on security, economic cooperation, and resource partnership. President Trump shared details of his conversation with Putin. No one wants peace more than Ukraine. Together with the U.S., we are charting our next steps to stop Russian aggression and ensure a lasting, reliable peace. As President Trump said, let's get it done. We agreed to maintain further contact and plan upcoming meetings. Your reactions to all of these developments today, Mary Catherine?
I mean, stop Russian aggression sounds good in concert with the peace part. I don't want the peace part to mean that everyone falls victim to Russian aggression in the future, right? That's the concern, is that you're giving way and you're allowing that to happen. I get a little concerned about Trump on this front, wanting a deal, wanting peace over making sure that there's a very solid, good deal in place. But we are in a situation where I'm not sure what the end game is for Ukraine and Russia. And I want to make sure that the US is as supportive as possible with resources and particularly technology and things that Biden seemed to sort of like just breadcrumb them with a little bit of help and a lot of money, but not actually the technological things that they would need to use to actually be more successful. So I think Trump is maybe more likely to be friendly to the bellicosity of the Ukrainians at times, or give them more equipment. But I am a little wary of where he's headed on this.
No, he named his negotiating team. General Kellogg has been doing the spade work to prep it up. But the four who are going to the negotiations are Secretary of State Rubio, CIA Director Ratcliffe, National Security Advisor Waltz, and Steve Witkoff. What do you make of the team?
Not a bad team at all. Again, I think I was pretty skeptical of the deal that Witkoff made in Israel, and yet it has resulted thus far in several. Obviously, I'm not elated about it, but seeing people come home was nothing short of miraculous. And so I take the downsides of that deal and look at the upsides and go, okay, well, progress was made there that I wasn't sure would be made. So I'm willing to listen to what they do on the ground. I trust Rubio quite a bit, and Waltz as well. So not a bad team to be going in there.
I think that team will not do a bad deal. Now, turning to what you just referenced, the ceasefire, I think it's dead. Hamas is now trying frantically to wave a white flag, but not the whole white flag. And Qatar is promising breakthroughs. I don't think Donald Trump is for backing up when he's laid it down. Do you?
Yeah, so I appreciate the way he spoke about this, because Hamas is the one that broke it, as usual. They're like, we're not going to send hostages home this weekend, even though that's part of the deal. And, I know the international community likes to ignore when Hamas breaks the deal, but they did. And so he's speaking about it in the terms that normal people understand, which is when you see these hostages come home, particularly these last 3 men, you go, how long can the others last if they are still alive in these conditions? And so you want to do something about that. Now, what he did was he sort of unleashed Netanyahu to do something about it. Should Saturday come and 76 aren't home, and we have to then read what will Netanyahu do at that point. But I think that Trump would certainly see it as a missed opportunity if Israel was not prepared to go forth with its own moves at that point.
Defense Minister Katz said today, the gates of hell will open. They've staged at least 2 divisions and many brigades of special operators. I really think a gunfight that's not going to stop and bombing that won't stop until it's over will happen unless 76 bodies and people walk out. What do you think?
I think that's very likely. I think the out for Hamas would be, okay, we'll give you 25. And then how does Israel say no to 25 even though they've violated the terms, right? This is the inherent problem here, is that they do feel this incredible responsibility, and the country is torn on this, to bring everyone home and to do it at great cost, sometimes to their own security. And so you end up with a situation where if they give you a terrible offer once again, but it gets some folks home, you might be willing to take the terrible offer.
They'd better turn them over at the Gaza border without the show and tell that backfired on them so badly. Mary Catherine Ham and Vic Mattis do Getting Hammered twice a week. You can find that podcast wherever podcasts are available. Getting Hammered is the only crossover podcast in our household. Both the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I listen to every minute of every broadcast because we like to laugh and we like to be smart. And Mary Catherine and Vic do a great job. Follow Mary Catherine at MK Hammer on X. Victorino Mattis at Victorino Mattis on X. AP is the old faithful of political correctness. Example. According to the AP Style Book, when writing about transgender individuals, use their preferred name, consider transgender as an adjective, not a noun, and avoid terms like biological sex or referring to someone as born a boy/girl. Instead, use sex assigned at birth. Okay, that's just left-wing craziness. And AP didn't change the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. And Donald Trump said they don't get to come into the Oval. And they've been complaining ever since. Oh, woe is me. Now, that's not viewpoint discrimination. That's not content discrimination. It's a question about their ability to do the job of an honest reporter. So Carolyn Levitt got a question in the White House today, and she hit it out of the park, cut number 20.
I have a thing for you. Which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language?
Brother Caitlin Collins, I'm kind of surprised. The night before she declared, literally 12 hours earlier, she said we're on the verge of a constitutional crisis. And here she's asking about why AP can't get in. What are they trying to do? Create controversy, get someone to watch CNN, which no one is doing. It won't work. Won't work. Nobody cares. Nobody should care. It's not a First Amendment issue. Now, I care about you going to the best place to get a mortgage. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian. AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. Can we roll that tape, Harley? Because I want them to see what Andrew and Todd look like. They're professionals. They've been at this for more than 30 years. Andrew has been my friend for more than 25 years. And that's Todd. That's Andrew, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. They will talk and work with you as long as it takes. There was Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are lenders, not brokers. They are not originators. They are people who actually write out the loan, underwrite the loan, make the loan. They help you get the loan approved. They help you fix your credit if it's dinged up. They give you wise counsel on how much you can borrow and when you should do. If you're a veteran, they, of course, handle nothing down loans. If you're an FHA first-time borrower, they do that. If you're a senior citizen who's thinking about a reverse mortgage, but it's complicated and you want to know about it, call up AndrewandTodd.com. They did my mortgage when the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I moved back to the Beltway. They did Dwayne's mortgage when he was staying in place here in Southern California. They've done thousands and thousands and thousands of mortgages for the audience of the Hugh Hewitt Show because they've been here for a decade. And I've never had a complaint. Never had a complaint. AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172. Call them today. The world is in crisis. Thousands of people are dead in Gaza. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands are dead in Ukraine. The world is on edge about what might be happening. in Israel on Saturday. Looks like the resumption of all-out war as Hamas has announced they are not releasing all the hostages. They got an ultimatum from Donald Trump, an ultimatum from Israel, and they did that after they broke the ceasefire, and Israel's done. And they're going to go get as many of the hostages as they can, and if Hamas murders them, I imagine Gaza will be occupied for decades. And I really do think Hamas is signing their own death warrant if they hit the remaining hostages that Israel knows to be alive. So it's back to the war on Saturday, 7 p.m. Israel time, I believe. They might collapse yet. They might. And I don't know if Iran's out of the target. So very serious time. Very serious time. Now, on Monday night, Caitlin Collins of CNN read her teleprompter and said, and I want to get it exactly right. She said, we are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks. And tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. And I taught con law this week, and I laughed about that. The only genuinely constitutional crisis we've had in the United States, the most recent constitutional crisis, was the Civil War. Some people think FDR's introduction of court packing in 1937 was a constitutional crisis, but it never made it out of the Senate. Not really a crisis. Packing the court wouldn't mean the end of the rule of law, and that will be a crisis because it's the end of the rule of law. The Constitution exists, like the rules of golf, to order the game. The American game is politics and governance. It's ordered by the Constitution, and although sometimes courts rule that presidents and or Congress have done unconstitutional things and must back up 2 steps, do not pass go, do not collect $200, but stop doing what you said you were going to do. And district courts say that quite a lot, and many of them are overturned. Not a constitutional crisis. This is the orderly working of the Constitution. It would only be if and when a president of the United States ignored a direct command from the court, and then the court doubled down and the president still wouldn't go along, that we might be in a constitutional crisis. But even then, I would doubt it, because it would depend upon the most important issue at hand and whether or not the court was out of its league. For example, the president is by designation the commander-in-chief, and that's why J.D. Vance used in his tweet the example of a district court countermanding a military order. That's patently unconstitutional on the part of the district court, and therefore the president that wouldn't be a constitutional crisis, that would be idiocy on the part of the district court. Might be a constitutional crisis if the Supreme Court backed up the district court, but that's never happened. Never happened. There have been times where Presidents Lincoln primarily have just ignored the court, but we were in a constitutional crisis then called the Civil War. Before the Civil War, there was the nullification crisis. Andrew Jackson stared down his former vice president, John C. Calhoun. That was a real constitutional crisis. We're not in one. We're not close to one. We haven't been in one ever in my lifetime. Never. Nixon resigned. Nixon turned over the tapes. No constitutional crisis. Bill Clinton was impeached. William Rehnquist held the impeachment. It was defeated. Not a constitutional crisis. Supreme Courts have reversed and Supreme Courts have upheld different points of view on everything. We're not in a constitutional crisis. It's just silly. Absolutely ridiculous. But Caitlin Collins said it, and she hasn't retracted it. So today, she got called on. So she made that statement on Monday night. And today she was called on by Carolyn Levitt, superstar extraordinaire. Such a change at the podium. And here's Carolyn Levitt and Caitlin Collins, cut number 20.
I don't think for you. Which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the Geographical Identification Name Server, and Apple has recognized that, Google has recognized that, pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America, and it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world. Sure.
All right. No constitutional crisis question. See what I'm getting at? If you had a White House reporter talking to Lincoln a day before the Confederacy fired on Fort Sumter, and they asked, Mr. Lincoln, are we in a constitutional crisis? Or they asserted in a newspaper, we're in a constitutional crisis. And then the crisis arrives, or the day of, or the day before, that reporter gets asked Abraham Lincoln's secretary, John Hay, are we in a constitutional crisis? And instead they ask, who's going to travel with Lincoln today to whatever event he was doing on the day the Civil War began? Wouldn't you think that maybe their statement the day before was just a bit way over their skis? Again, we got the tape. This was Caitlin Collins, Monday night.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. Now, the first shoe on this dropped when a federal judge today said the White House is defying his order to unfreeze billions of dollars in federal aid, marking the first time that we've had a judge expressly accuse the Trump administration of ignoring a court ruling. And in a separate case today, federal employees here in Washington told a judge that the administration was defying another order by not reinstating workers who had been put on leave. Now, this all has prominent Democrats and many of the nation's top constitutional scholars declaring that the U.S. is on the brink of a reckoning. The Trump Justice Department says the president should have the authority to decide how to run the government and that these judges are overreaching. And some of the president's allies say the judges should not be judging any of the moves to shrink the federal government.
All right. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And now I have the proof it's ridiculous. Because Caitlin Collins did not ask about the reckoning. Isn't that like a movie? Isn't that a horror movie? Generalissimo, when was the reckoning out? Is that like The Omen?
I think there's a movie called The Reckoning.
Oh, you're guessing. You're like Caitlin Collins.
I'm not a big horror fan.
Yeah, you're guessing. Do you think it's a constitutional crisis?
No.
Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning. See, I knew that.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
It wasn't a constitutional crisis on the show.
Not being my producer in there. I'm just here to tell you, CNN is dead. I mean, it's dead. And I don't blame Caitlin Collins. She didn't write it. She read it. I don't blame her for the sort of dumb question. You had a chance to ask Caroline Leavitt a bunch of things. Like, is the president going to do anything about Putin and Zelensky? He might have made news. I don't know what time of the day that was. Maybe it was before Putin and Trump. Obviously, they have no sources in the White House. Obviously, they have no idea what's going on. CNN is just dead, dead, dead. How do you revive? What are the paddles you use to resurrect that corpse? I really don't have any idea. Sam fled. Sam was their longtime Washington, D.C. editor. Chris Lick got fired because of a profile in the Atlantic hatchet job. And I don't know who's running it now. They're trying to sell it, probably. There aren't any ratings. Formerly robust ratings they're just not there. More people are listening to me right now than are watching CNN. And I think that's like, if you do the cum for CNN over the 3 hours of my show, I've got more right now than they've got right now. And it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Washington, D.C. I just think more people are listening to me. And I can't prove that because radio doesn't have day-by-day ratings, and neither does Salem News Channel. But I know the reach. I know where we are. I'm not on in airports. That would be good. I'd like airport viewers. But it's because it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous network. Stop being ridiculous. Start doing what the old CNN did. Cover Ukraine, cover Gaza, cover the countdown. Have your White House correspondent say, hey, Saturday, is Iran on the target list? Ask a serious question and don't make up serious issue. We're not in a constitutional crisis, and nobody cares that AP wasn't in the room. Nobody cares.
Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against George. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk. Oh,
welcome back, America. Which side is John Campbell on, the former congressman of more than a decade from California, now a refugee in Arizona, joins us each time at This Week. Congressman, which side are you on?
You know, as you are aware, I have sung in church choirs over the years, and I am far from the best singer or have been in any of those choirs, but could they at least sing on key? I mean, come on. Oh, that was so bad.
I think I believe it is correct that I first met you when I was in the pew in front of you, and I turned around and said, you ought to be in the choir, because I can't sing at all. And you actually have a very nice voice. Is that shot now? Has the Arizona sun baked your vocal cords?
My vocal cords are not what they once were, and so and age has its effect on this as well. But they're still probably better than yours.
Well, that's not even a doubt, because I can't carry a tune. I have one note. It comes around in every song, but I have one note. I just think the quality of the left-wing protests has been rather low, don't you think?
Yeah, very much so. And I think, to me, this shows that they are completely without a mission. They are completely without a message. They are completely without leadership. They are lost they are Churchill's in the wilderness, except that they're far from Churchill. They just don't know what they're doing. As I've heard you say and others say, to come out and say we're against government efficiency and is just absurd.
Yes, Comfortably Smug was on in the first hour. He said, can you believe they've made their target the defense of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government? It is kind of a strategic error.
It's just not going to work. And then the other thing to me that was a huge tell that they have not moved. Well, two things. My latest congressman here in Arizona, Gallego, who is a huge hard lefty. As soon as he became the Democratic nominee, he ran to the middle and said he was for closing the border and everything else, which was all lies. But he ran against a poor candidate in Kerry Lake and he got elected. So he's been running around the state carrying eggs and saying that the price of eggs is Donald Trump's fault and, we Democrats are going to fix it. If you look at what Democrats are saying, they're basically saying that they think that they lost because of the price of eggs, that's literally all they lost about. Had nothing to do with any of the other subjects going on out there, of which I could name a million of them, and crime and wars and the border and everything else. Had nothing to do with that. It just has to do with the price of eggs. And I think proof of that was that vote in the House few weeks ago on whether you allow men in women's sports and in women's bathrooms and in women's locker rooms. Only 2 Democrats out of what do they have now, 215 or something, 218 Democrats, only 2 voted for that. So all 216 or whatever Democrats out of 218 said that, no, we're in favor of men in women's locker rooms, men in women's bathrooms, and men in women's sports. Now, if they think that is a winning issue, they are completely lost. And
they're setting up for a 1984 replay. In 1984, Ronald Reagan crushed Walter Mondale. Crushed him because the economic Now, it won't be an incumbent president. I don't know who the nominee is going to be. But if Democrats stay on the far left of the country's political spectrum, by which I mean the 4th quartile, that's an 80-20 issue. So they're siding with the 20. Good on them. Go for it. Now, Congressman, you're an accountant, allegedly, because you went to USC and you've been in Congress, allegedly. I never saw you there. 12 years. And you were on the finance committee and you did budget stuff. Weren't you on the budget committee too?
I was, yes.
All right. So the budget committee's got to come up with a budget in order to unlock reconciliation. I finished a column, it'll be in Fox tomorrow, saying, hey, you over there in the House, finish the budget. Get it done. Because the president won and we cannot not have a budget. Are they going to get it done?
I think they will. Speaker Johnson has said that might come into committee tomorrow. So that he said that either this morning or yesterday. So we'll see whether that comes to pass. That said, he has missed a number of deadlines on this so far, and they don't want to release it. I think clearly what they're trying to do, they can't. What can they lose? One vote, and I think that's it, right?
Maybe not even one
Yeah.
when the UN ambassador retires.
Yeah, so they have to get basically everybody on board. So they don't want to release a bill, I don't think, where they haven't essentially know that they're going to get everybody on board. So I think that's what's holding it up. They are apparently they're going to, the House is out next week. So if they don't bring it to Budget Committee tomorrow, then it won't come until week after next, which gets longer and longer and so forth. But it does look like what they're working towards is the one big beautiful bill, which would include the debt limit, would include it will have a lot of stuff in it. There's no question about that. And the math of this, given how reconciliation works, where basically over 10 years it has to balance to zero, and the way that the CBO scores it, et cetera, the math of it's going to be very complicated because there's going to be a lot of moving parts. In addition to the tax cuts, they'll do some tweaks on the tax cuts. We know that, whether it's no tax on tips, Social Security, whatever, those sorts of things. But then there'll be all the spending cuts that are going to be
That's
in there.
news to me, John, because I thought they had to agree on how much it would increase the debt over 10 years. That the last time they did this, Pat Toomey said no more than $1.5 trillion added to the debt. So they said, okay, we can run $1.5 trillion in red ink. I don't think it has to balance after 10 years. But you were on the Budget Committee. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it has to, over 10 years, I believe it has to balance. I believe it has to get, this is why whenever we have these tax cuts, they do them for 5 years and then they stop. Because over 10 years, it doesn't happen that much. And the tax increases that happen over 5 offset the decreases that happen in the first 5. So that's the way the kind of math works. And you heard again a few weeks ago, Speaker Johnson was telling the president and Elon Musk, hey, don't cut too much now. Let us include it in the budget deal so we can use those tax cuts to pay for, use those spending reductions to pay for some of the tax cuts we want to put in. So I'm not 100% sure of exactly where it all works, but the ones I did, that's what we had to do.
If they agreed, Bill Bennett told me yesterday that the Department of Education has $1.7 trillion in student loans marked as an asset. If they agree to sell that to a private sector, can they market at 1.7 trillion and sell it to the private, or put it in the budget, even though it's not worth 1.7 trillion?
I would presume they should, and this is what Secretary Bessent has been talking about: is looking at assets on the federal balance sheet that they can monetize and turn into something to reduce the deficit. That would include all these bills in Washington, D.C., and a whole bunch of other things that...
Okay, stand by. I got to go to break, but John Campbell will be back after the break because budget math is actually black magic. It's tomfoolery and wizardry, but it's hoops through which the Congress must jump because they passed the Budget Reconciliation or Empowerment Act of 1974. John Campbell joins me, former congressman, formerly on Financial Services, formerly on the Budget Committee, and I'm trying to figure out the reconciliation process. Now, John, I know that there are some very principled conservatives like Chip Roy who don't want to pass other than a balanced budget or demand deep cuts, et cetera, like that. Do you think they would actually defy Donald Trump's entire agenda, or is everyone just playing, chicken on the highway with 2 cars going very fast?
Yeah, I don't think they would. I think the superpower for this particular act of a Republican Congress is Donald J. Trump. And the fact that I think if he gets called into the Oval and sits there with Trump in front of him, and Trump says, "Are you going to blow up my whole agenda?" I think he won't do it. He'll talk about something, and maybe Trump gives him something, a bill in the future or something, whatever. I don't know what, but no, I don't think they will. And in my 10 years in Congress, I watched so many times that we thought the Democrats would not be able to pull enough people together to pass stuff, but they always did. And the reason is, by nature, they're collectivists. And so the Democratic Party is a union shop. And they believe that you're in the union, you vote the way the union leaders do, and that's what you do, or you're not in the union. And so it's much easier for them to come together. Republicans by nature, individualists. That is part of what makes you a Republican. And therefore, it is much more difficult, and has been the whole 10 years I was there, and has been since, where you've seen many of these bills come together, and you have 2 Republicans or 5 Republicans or 30 Republicans that are out there saying, I just won't vote for this because I believe this and I believe that, and I'm standing on principle, and therefore I'm proud to stand on principle, and I'm proud to, and I get that, and I understand that, and I wouldn't want us to change our character and suddenly become collectivists instead of individualists. But at the end, it's a team sport. And in the end, it is a sport whereby if you just dribble to the basket every single time and never pass the ball to somebody else, you will lose the game. And so it is a team sport. And sometimes you got to put together as a team. You got to say, there's 5. If I were there, I don't like no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes. I can't stand that. I think it's a terrible idea. Why should one sort of earned income be taxed differently than another?
Because it's not earned income.
Well, yes, I'm against. Let me just say, I'm against it. I'm totally against it. But would I vote for this package with it? Absolutely.
Okay, good. Just so long as
you're gonna
don't let principles get in the way of politics.
No, we've got, as you said, this is a generational opportunity to change the government, change the way it operates, change the way it finances, change everything. It's a generational opportunity. And there are going to be things in that bill that every single Republican is not going to like. But they're going to have to suck it up this time, because you can't just have 5 of them say vote.
Well, one of them's going to say, but this time is always, that's always the excuse. This time we have to take a stand. What do you say to that?
But I think the superpower will be Donald J. Trump, because normally those people are more conservative than the Republican occupying the White House. That was true in the case of George W. Bush. It was true in the case of George H.W. Bush, et cetera. But now that's not the case. Now they can't go to Donald Trump and say, "Oh, well, you're a rhino, and I'm just not going to be a rhino." No, it doesn't work this time. It just doesn't work this time. So I think he's the superpower that can bring those people into the fold and make it that once and for all, finally, even with this tiny majority, that Republicans are able to pass something generationally significant.
Let me tell you about my fear, is that Lindsey Graham proposed on the Senate side $150 billion increase over, I believe, 2 years for defense. Roger Wicker wanted $200 billion. They compromised on $150 billion because we're out of bullets, we're out of submarines, we don't have any docks, we're completely behind China. The budget hawks will go after defense. Will anyone defend defense?
Go after defense, meaning the budget hawks will want to make
we'll
sure...
refuse to give them an uptick from their current budget.
Oh, I see what you're saying, that some will do that. Here's where I think the sweet spot on that perhaps is, that, as you've seen, Secretary Hegseth now is saying that he wants DOJ to come in and look at defense. And we know there's going to be a lot there. One of the things I pointed out many, many times when I was in Congress was that, and this is when I was there, that we had 1.2 million people in uniform, and we had 750,000 non-uniformed employees of the Department of Defense.
Doesn't count contractors either.
No, almost a 1-to-1 ratio when you include contractors. That's nuts. Why do we have that? There has to be tons of weights there that we can spend on bullets.
The Defense Reform Commission, whose recommendations we put to an up or down vote, makes a lot of sense to me. John Campbell, a congressman extraordinaire. Follow him on X at @LookThroughThru Chaos. Thank you, Congressman.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against George. We'll fight Elon Musk. No, we let's get within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
It doesn't get old, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I played it 8 times, but every one of my guests, including Selena Zito, who you can find pretty much everywhere. She writes everywhere. You got a new assignment, Selena? Have you got a new gig?
Nothing I can talk about yet.
Okay. Somebody put it on my sheet, but I didn't think it was announced yet. So, Selena, they're fighting against Doge. Are they going to show up at Iron Mountain?
Why'd you make me watch that, first of all?
I make every guest watch it today.
Okay. I have to, before I answer that question, the contrast between that and watching Mark Vogel, a Yinzer, come home last night with a Steelers hat, an Iron City beer, and an American flag draped over him, I think just sort of tells you about the psyche of both parties. And if you have to choose between one or the other, it is people are going to go with the Yinzer.
Selena, I have a quick question for you. Mrs. Vogel was at the Butler rally where Donald Trump was shot in the head, Corey Competore murdered, and you were there on the ground in the line of fire. Were you near her?
Yeah, I saw her. So President Trump does this, all politicians do it. It's called the click line, where people get to take photos with the president. Usually it's like local people and people that are, state troopers, policemen. And she was there. And you could see her. He held both of her hands and looked straight at her. And she looked at him and said, "Will you bring my son home?" And he said, "I promise you I will." And she literally danced out of the backstage. There's like a tunnel you go through, and she goes out to where her seat was at the rally. And I think it was a name of a song that I can't say on public air by what's his name, the rock star that's always with Trump. I can't think of his name right now. Anyways, she comes barreling out there. She's 95 years old, and she was not touching the ground. And she never gave up hope. She was always optimistic. Anytime you talked to her, she knew her son was going to come home.
You have the new book, Butler, coming out. Butler comes out soon. Yeah. Are you going to have some diagrams in there so that we can see these various places?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to
happen. Okay, good. Because I got where the roof is, but I don't know where the Corey was. I don't know where you were, both when you talked to the president, when the shooting occurred. I don't know where she was. All of this is just an amazing story. When does Butler come out?
It comes out on July 8th. People can pre-order it now. It's on Amazon, and it is an emotional ride. There's some great highs, there's some great lows, there's some really hysterical parts in it, and there's so much you will learn that you never read before. Not just about that day, but also about Butler and also about the election from the viewpoint of the heartland.
All right, so tell me about Doge.
So I went up to Iron Mountain today. I have been in there before, previously as a local reporter. I didn't get in there today, and I didn't ask. I really just wanted to talk to people about how they felt about a Doge sort of questioning their, what they do there. And I really dug in also to the history. It was originally a limestone plant that supplied limestone for U.S. Steel for over 50 years. But also it has been a place, it's massive. Like if you go in there, it's absolutely massive. It is like being in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And when they initially did put the documents in there of the retired employees, it was yes, because of space, but also you have to remember that was like the Cold War, and there was going to be an atomic bomb, and you had to be able to preserve government documents. And so that's why they're in there. Now, today, we don't talk about nuclear war as much and that threat. We do talk about cyber warfare and cyber threat. And so why do they continue to do this? Well, they do continue to do this manually, but they also do it digitally so that they are preserved and protected.
Who runs it?
The alphabet soup, the OBM.
The what?
Office of Bureau Management.
Oh, OMB. OMB. I thought maybe
I'm
the
sorry.
National Archives and Record Administration ran it. But
No,
so
no. And there's 700 people from Butler that work there just a few miles from where the president was shot.
700 feds in Butler?
Yeah.
What, do they think they're going to lose their job?
No, I didn't get that sense. As I talk to people, they're like, we're not doing anything crazy here. What we're doing is the preservation of very important treasures in our government. And yes, it may seem like it's antiquated because some of it, like half of it, is done on paper. But there's
I want to speak up for paper and archivists because I've run the Nixon Library twice. Once when the library was private and once the foundation in partnership with NARA. Paper documents are a joy for researchers to use. Digital documents, not so much, because you just can't quickly scan. It's why I don't want PDFs of books that I'm supposed to review. I want a review copy because of the way you work with a book as opposed to a digital copy. It's not the same. I mean, if you want me to read Butler, you got to send me Butler, and then I'll read Butler, and we'll talk about Butler, and I'll have my annotated copy in front of me.
Oh, I will send you the book.
Oh, I know that. It'll go on the promotion shelf. You see the promotion shelf back here right now? Tom Cotton's book is on the promotion shelf. 7 things you can't say about China. Yeah, it'll go on the promotion shelf.
I just started reading it. It's a really great book. But yeah, so there is purpose behind what they do. That's a lot of people to be employed in one place.
Oh, yeah.
You would absolutely wipe out several small towns if you eliminated 700 jobs.
You better use your bat phone to Donald Trump. Tell him to keep Elon out of Iron Mountain. You better put up the Z. Instead of having the bat signal, we got the Z signal. That's when Donald Trump has got to call Selena Zito. Follow her on X at Zito Selena. Read everything she writes at selenazito.com. And want to play one more clip? Cut number 23, Carolyn Levitt at today's White House briefing.
Does Elon Musk have power of the presidency?
Absolutely not.
Right.
That's a ridiculous question.
I asked that question because, the Democrats have been hurling insults at Elon Musk, hurling attacks, calling him President Musk. Most recently, Jamie Raskin, the congressman, took it a step further, calling for Musk's impeachment, saying that he somehow usurped the power of the presidency. What's your response?
It's utterly ridiculous. Elon Musk addressed this in the Oval Office yesterday. The president addressed it as well. Elon Musk is serving at the pleasure of the president.
Somebody please bring up Harry Hopkins. Carolyn's very good at this. Somebody please bring up Harry Hopkins. Okay, FDR's best friend who had no official portfolio but decided matters of life and death for millions of Americans and around the world. So somebody bring up Harry Hopkins. Really? I don't know who asked that. Don't know the young kid with the beard. Could be anybody. Not a very smart question. Just Democrat talking points. What do we think? Do we think the Huffington Post? Do we think MSNBC? I don't know. Take a guess. Democrat talking point. Caitlin Collins has replied to my criticism on X, saying that she didn't ask just those 2 questions. She asked 2 other questions. I am always fair. I am always fair. Let's play her first question. Remember, on Monday night, she said we were on the brink of a crisis. There were reports that we were on the brink of a constitutional crisis. Her first question today.
Caitlin.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a few things for you, but on the commitment by President Trump, he said that he and President Putin agreed to visit each other's respective nations. Are there any preconditions that President Trump has that President Putin must do before he goes and meets with him, withdrawing some forces, withdrawing all forces, anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but I was just talking with the president in our national security team. I wasn't made aware of any conditions, but if they exist, I'm happy.
Not a crisis question. No constitutional crisis. Cut number 2.
Provide those.
And on the president himself, he styles himself as this master negotiator. He is now deploying these negotiations, saying that they start immediately. We did hear from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, today saying that NATO membership is not realistic for Ukraine, and neither is returning to pre-2014 borders. Aren't they giving away bargaining chips before these negotiations have even started?
Again, I haven't talked to the president about Ukraine's NATO membership, and he appointed several individuals to negotiate on his behalf. He's directly involved in these negotiations as well, and I'm sure if you ask him that question in the near future, when you're able to, he'll give you an answer. I just don't.
That is an excellent question. Would have been a great question any other day. But if the civil war is about to start, or the president's going to declare that the courts are null and void, whatever the constitutional crisis that Caitlin had us believe is imminent, let's go back and play what she had to say on Monday night.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. Now, the first shoe on this.
She got 4 questions today. 4, not 2. We only had originally 2 clips. I want to play. She got 4 at-bats. 0 for 4 on constitutional crises. My point is it's alarmist, incendiary rhetoric from a news anchor from a formerly widely watched and appreciated network with whom I have worked in the past, but not for. And I get along with everyone over there. I pitched debates with them. I've worked debates with them. It's just a mistake. One amplified by Brian Stelter, one I would not have seen, except Brian Stelter also has seen him play, decided to make that the big lead on his X account. So no, she did not ask about a crisis because there isn't a crisis. Rhett in Atlanta. How are you, Rhett?
Hi, Hugh. Thanks for taking my call.
Great to talk to you.
Great. This morning's host, Mr. Segal, mentioned that in the budget reconciliation that they may have to get something that the Republicans could choke down. I guess the only thing that I think they should choke down is the tax cuts, no tax on Social Security, and no tax on tips.
Well, I really don't know what Chris referred to. I'm going to wait to look at the plan. I don't think they have to choke down anything. I think they've got to sell a lot of assets and make some cuts and make it balance in 10 years if John Campbell's right. But I don't know what, Chris is a fine morning guy. You're enjoying Chris?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Is he funny?
He's very to the point. He's really good.
Is he awake?
Yes.
I want to tell you something that is a secret. I am no longer awake when Chris goes on the air. And I'm very happy about that. Thank you, Rhett. Paul in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, Paul, I sent a question into the Cleveland Browns podcast. Said, what set of draft choices from what level team would the Browns have to take in exchange for Myles Garrett? What do you think?
Oh, my goodness. A whole lot of first-rounders, my goodness. I'm not a big NFL fan, but and I am a Browns fan. But
we can admit it. This is like a 12-step group. The first thing is we have to admit we have a problem. We are Browns fans.
We got a big
problem.
Elon Musk. We need Elon Musk to figure this out, okay?
No, he'd cut everyone on the team.
He would. Everyone's gone.
We'd be under the cap. All right, my friend. What's your question?
My point is this, is with these guys in charge, with the way that they're working, with Elon Musk and Donald Trump in charge, should we expect at the end of a 4-year term a dividend check?
No. Because we
can pay down the deficit.
Let me explain why. We owe $36 trillion in debt.
I understand. We'll put it towards the deficit. Otherwise, if we had a zero balance sheet today,
then we get a dividend. We get a tax cut.
We get a dividend.
Yep, but you got to retire $36 trillion in debt.
States, we should expect a dividend.
Well, $36 trillion. We ain't getting no dividend. Thank you, Paul. Let me go to Divide, Colorado. Hello, John.
Hello, Hugh. We have $36 trillion in debt. Europe has 3 times the population, 10 times the GDP of Russia. Ukraine's their problem. We're out. We got other fish to fry.
Well, that's not the president's approach. He wants to end the war.
I know, but if
so, you're to the right of the president.
Play, we're gone.
You're to the right of the president.
I am.
I'm with the
and
president.
I wasn't before.
I'm with
I
President
wasn't
Trump.
before until Elon got there.
I'm with
and now
President
I realize
Trump.
that
John, I'm just with President Trump. I think statesmen have to take a long view, and he's doing that, and he's doing a great job. Thank you, John. Ellie, Santa Rosa. See, I've gone from east to west. I started in Atlanta, went to Colorado, went to Cleveland, went to Colorado. I'm going out to Ellie in Santa Rosa, California. Hi, Ellie. You got to be quick.
Hi. You had a discussion with Rally-goers, and the president made a statement about all hell's going to break loose on Saturday. What's going to happen on Saturday with Gaza? Is Hamas going to give in and release all the hostages? Some of the hostages?
I don't know. I am neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet. If Yoni's listening, he can call in and tell us. But I do believe that Israel has staged an incredible force, both in the Philadelphia corridor. I think they're back in the Netzarim corridor. I know they're on the border of Gaza, north-south border of Gaza, and their special force. I just think their defense minister said today, the gates of hell will open. That's a Thermopylae kind of statement. They're going to go get their people, and they're going to go get everyone in Hamas. That's what I think is going to happen. Whether or not the U.S. hits Iran depends on what Iran does, and we don't know. Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General, was in the Oval today with Donald Trump, and here's what she said about a new day at the DOJ.
We're here today because we have filed charges against the state of New York. We have filed charges against Kathy Hochul. We have filed charges against Letitia James and Mark Schroeder, who is with DMV. This is a new DOJ, and we are taking steps to protect Americans, American citizens, and angel moms, like the mom standing right behind me, who you're going to hear from in a moment. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today.
All right. I love that. I love that. Now I want to go back and play again for you, because it's becoming a thing on Twitter. Caitlin Collins on Monday night.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. Now, the first shoe on this dropped when a federal judge today said the White House is defying his order to
It goes on. I am told that there's a discussion later in the program about judges. The open is an alarmist, irresponsible open intended to scare and with the effect of misinforming people. We are not anywhere near a constitutional crisis. The Constitution, which I've been teaching for 27 years, exists to resolve disputes between the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch, and between the federal government and the state, and the federal government and foreign powers, and on a few occasions between the federal government and individuals. It is a complicated document. It has never not worked out since the Civil War. There have been terrible decisions unjust to millions of Americans, as in the Plessy decision in the late 19th century and in the Korematsu decision in the immediate aftermath of World War II. However, there is no constitutional crisis, and if there was one, Caitlin Collins would have used one of her 4 questions today to ask about it.